Several minutes of commercial-free football starts now.
Here are the Purple Mortgage
Hey, welcome
guys.
everybody to Purple Mortgage Guys. We're three guys in the home loan business. We do loans in all 50 states, but we love talking Minnesota Vikings football. So tonight we're going to talk about the top three positions of need for the Vikings, in our opinion, going into the 2023 season. We're thinking mostly talking about the draft on this episode, but just overall position of need, whether it be free agency or the draft coming up this spring. So, Tanner, let's jump right into it. Goose, you as well. What do you think the overall number one position of need is for the Vikings going into 23? And you can make assumptions about who's going to be around and who's not, but overall, like, what's your gut telling you on what's the number one need for the team going forward?
Yeah, so my answer probably might surprise a few people. A lot of people might not even agree with it. But I think a lot of people probably assume, just as bad as our defense was last year, that it's going to come from a defensive positional group, which I wouldn't argue. But for me, it's receiver. It's wide receiver. And that probably sounds a little silly when you got a guy like Justin Jefferson, who's the best receiver in the league, on your team. But in Kevin O'Connell's offense, as much as we like to air it out, TJ Hawkins is a solid 2 option. But I don't really feel great about anybody else on the roster right now that's not named Justin Jefferson at that receiver group. I've said it before, KJ Osborne is, in my opinion, a wide receiver 3 at best. I still think he's a solid player, but I feel like at this point in his career, we've probably already seen like his peak, in my opinion. And tackling a receiver in the offseason is kind of tough because the position is becoming more and more important in this league. To have like a solid number 2 option on your team. You look at the best passing offenses in the league, like the Bengals. Chiefs obviously have Kelsey, and Mahomes helps a lot. But I feel like most teams probably have that solid 1-2 punch that allows them to be aggressive. And for the 8th year in a row, we've seen here now that the Chiefs have continued to prove that you need a top 10 offense to win in this league. This is no longer a defense wins championships league. It's offense. So I think getting a solid number 2 option, it doesn't have to be a Pro Bowl or anything like that, but just a guy that can take some pressure off of Justin Jefferson going into 2023, because that's not something we had last year, I felt like, with Thielen and KJ Osborne. So that's my number one need going into the offense.
Tanner, you and I railed on the defense all season long, and you stood there and stood up for him, and he was protecting them. They were his defense, and now here we are saying offense is a position of need. But I think it's an interesting take. I tend to agree with you on that. The more you're talking about it, like if we can solidify that wide receiving core going forward, we're going to score a lot of points and take the pressure off the defense potentially as well. Goose, I'm really curious what you think. Do you think it's wide receiver as well, or are you going on the other side of the ball?
I actually agree with Tanner, which I didn't. I thought I might be the lone person on this take, but I think wide receiver was number one for me. Some of the reasons that I think we'll get to a little later with other position groups that I don't want to dip into yet. But I think we started to see at the end of the year, teams are really honing in on JJ, and it's only going to continue to happen more. And we have to have someone to take that pressure off of him. I think more so now that there's a lot of talk about, Delvin potentially not returning, whether it's the team's choice or Delvin not wanting to move on his contract. If we go with a running back by committee, it's not going to take a ton of pressure off of our pass game. And I think you need 2 dynamic guys to really be effective in this league. And I just like some of our potential at other positions that may look like a need. We've got some young guys on the roster. So I want to get that 1A receiver in here, 1A, 1B, and have that duo for a long time. Wide receivers also becoming a position. We're talking about JJ getting $32 million. It's almost becoming like a quarterback position. Like if you can get a stud 1B wide receiver on a rookie deal. That's also big for the cap and helping build up that defense.
So are you guys thinking draft, first round, second round draft pick on a receiver, or are you ideally is it via free agency?
So for me, that's kind of tough to answer just because, like, as much as I want to solidify that number 2 spot, I'm not like crazy, like in love with any of the receivers in this draft. Like, I don't really have like a top guy that like I have in years past where I'm like, that's my dude. That's who I want. And I haven't really had a chance to really look at the free agent class yet, but free agents just cost money. And I feel like you can get somewhat similar production on a draft pick. But you just got a lot of guys I feel like that are kind of in the same class when it comes to, being a prospect here coming up in the draft. So just to name off a few guys, real quick here, the receiver from TCU, Quentin Johnston, I think is probably going to be the top guy going into the draft as of now. He's predicted to test pretty well. Big dude, like 6'5", runs fast. But I don't necessarily think Max Dugan's like an incredibly great quarterback, and I don't think the level of competition that they played against was extremely top either. But you got a lot of middle tier guys. There's like a small group of guys here that kind of are all in the same category, in my opinion, that really good route runners. They'll be solid players in the league, I think, for a really long time, but I don't know if they'll ever be like elite Pro Bowlers or anything by any means. And that's Zay Flowers from Boston College, Jackson Smith-Njigba from Ohio State, and Jordan Addison out of USC are all going to be solid guys as well. And you'll probably see their names come across here in the top 3 names in the draft leading up to that as well.
Goose, you thinking draft pick there then as well, or are you thinking free agency?
Yeah, I'm all in on the draft. I think to get someone who's going to be a clear improvement on Adam or KJ, they're going to command a decent amount of money because they're such a commodity right now. And you never know when you're going to get that next Kenny Golladay deal that doesn't pan out and you're paying a ton of money. So 100% going to the draft. I think it also is going to really help that a guy like JJ is here. Most of these guys taken in the first or second round are normally looked to be the guy on the team, and to not have to be that should only help them out. And hopefully we've got Adam around for another year or two to kind of mentor a little bit. But yeah, I'm going draft all the way for both cap reasons, and then just because I don't think there's going to be a really big stud available in free agency.
Sure.
One thing I'd like to mention real quick.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you again, but this was mentioned on numerous occasions already, but something that I've picked up a couple times from KOC's press conferences and a couple interviews that he's done is one thing that they seem like they're going to prioritize this offseason. It's not necessarily just the receiver position, but as a team in general.
Speed.
They want to get faster. So we have a guy like Jalen Reagor already who is a speed demon, but I think they really I think KOC wants that vertical threat. That dude like a Deshaun Jackson, like somebody that's going to stretch the field, and then you can kind of let Justin Jefferson, work the middle tier and the short game. So that's something I'm super excited to kind of take a look at as the combine comes around and see some of these 40 times and see what kind of prospects the Vikings might potentially be interested in that position as well.
Was that kind of the Van Jefferson that he had for the Rams then? That type of
Van Jefferson's not really a speed guy. Okay. This could be just a KOC thing like himself, something that he wants to just implement into his offense, not something he's necessarily had in the past.
Sure. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Speaking of speed, I think you guys make a really good case. I think we want to build a consensus on the top 3 needs, and receivers definitely one of them. I was going to say linebacker. I don't know if you guys agree with that or if you had them in your top 3 as well, but I feel like Kendricks could be gone. Hicks will be gone. We were slow a lot of times chasing down running backs out of the backfield and just struggling with tight ends throughout the 22 season. So I don't know. I think linebackers up there, but I'm curious, Tanner, what do you have number 2 position in need? What are you thinking?
I agree with you, Brent. Linebacker. I know we had Will Raggets on the show last week from SI. He does a lot of work for the Vikings, and he kind of made it seem like, which actually kind of caught me off guard. He made it seem like he thought Kendricks was going to be back this next year. I guess I don't really see a scenario where either are back, Kendricks or Hicks, just because we need to get younger. They cost a lot of money, and I think in order, like, if you want to have like keep a 3-4 scheme around here and run a lot of majority sets like that, Kendricks and Hicks don't fit that bill anymore. They're 4-3 linebackers. They should be playing, the Mike position, the Will position, the Sam position, in those schemes, and not running in a 3-4. So Brian Asamoah, obviously you talked about that too, is already a solid fit. So I think you already have one of those holes fit, and I think they have pretty high expectations from him going into next year. Fast linebacker, pursues well, can cover, and I think they just need to find another guy that goes along well with him. And that is one position I could see them addressing in free agency, because linebackers have such a short lifespan. And I think you could bring a really productive guy in here, that's like 26 years old, and get a solid 4 years out of him at like $8 or $9 million a year.
Goose, what do you think on that linebacker?
I can see what you guys are saying. I didn't have them in my top 3, but I'll concede as a minority here. And my thinking is, I did agree with Will. I think either Hicks or Kendricks is back, one of the two. I'm not quite ready to give up on EK, especially knowing that I think Flores is going to use him a lot better to his potential and his experience, and having a guy that can fly around like Asamoah next to him. I think the two veteran guys next to each other really hurt. I think the scheme where they had to probably get deep and maybe cover some faster guys in the middle of the field wasn't playing to their strengths. But I think with either EK or Hicks back, Asamoah filling in next to them, and then really, since we're looking at a 3-4 scheme, you look at edge rusher as the linebacker category. And I think the Vikings find a way under Brian Flores to bring back Daniil and Za'Darius this year. So I kind of look at it like you could legitimately have 4 of your starters already on the roster. And there's, for me, 2 other position groups that I would maybe look at ahead of that.
Well, who'd you have at number 2 then, Goose?
My thought on number 2 is probably in general defensive back, and against popular opinion, I'm kind of looking at safety. I do think we need to add corner depth, but I think some people are forgetting that we have a lot of youth that could still come out with a Caleb Evans, Andrew Booth, Dantzler, maybe get Duke Shelley back on a pretty team-friendly deal. But we've seen those guys over the past 5-6 years get injured a lot at that position. So I still think you need to add depth there. My thing is, you look, I love Harrison Smith, got his hat on. Even if he's back for a year or two, it's definitely, he's at the twilight of his career.
You're looking for Harry's replacement then. Like, you're not writing off Lewis Cine necessarily.
No,
but
I look at it like
a Bynum fan.
Yeah, I look at it like, hey, I still have hope in Lewis. He did suffer a significant injury, was struggling to crack the lineup, but I still have a lot of hope in his potential with his speed, his hard hitting, the level of football he played at with Georgia. He's shown that he can do it. So I've got faith in him, but even then, yeah, plan to move on from Harry. There's a chance that Lewis Cine doesn't pan out, and I don't think Cam Bynum is a really long-term solution there. So I think you got to at least bring in one guy, hope that Cam Bynum or Lewis Cine can solidify himself, and then you got to have someone across from him. So kind of the Harrison Smith contingency plan is what I'm looking for.
Tanner, what do you say on that? DB with emphasis on a safety.
Sorry, still on mute. Are you referring to like my third spot here, or just
what do you got for your third spot?
This one is so tough because I feel like there's so many different routes that they could potentially go here that could be a position of need here within the next month. And I really want to say like defensive line, like interior defensive linemen specifically, because we don't know if Dalvin Tomlinson's going to be back or not. As much as I think I would like to have him back next year, I'm just not sure if the team will think that his cap number, I think, is worth it. And another really big thing that I've been reading in a couple articles is that Brian Flores, specifically with his scheme, has always kind of had like a I don't really know what I want to name it, but like a beluga whale at nose tackle, like a hefty dude. And I kind of would love to see them bring in somebody like Linval Joseph again in the offseason. Just somebody that takes up space, can eat a lot of space in the run game. And really, like, the only solid starter we have back, they're coming back at that position this year, is Harrison Phillips. The other guys are all rotational. Ross Blacklock, I'm expecting he's probably going to be cut. And James Lynch is a rotational guy. So I think that you could probably add a couple guys there, and they'll probably do that via draft and free agency. As for corner, I agree that they should bring in a veteran and look to add some depth there, because it's still a relatively young group, but I think you're going to see a significant improvement this coming season, because we harped all year on Donatel not playing to players' strengths, and every single corner on our roster, probably except Patrick Peterson at this point in his career, was drafted like into a man scheme, and they made a living in college off of man coverage. I mean, Cameron Dantzler is not the fastest guy in the world. He runs a 4.6 or something like that. So putting him in a zone scheme is not probably going to benefit him at all. So getting him up on the line of scrimmage, getting physical and man coverage, I think that's going to benefit him a lot. In Flores' new scheme, Caleb Evans thrived in man coverage in college, and so did Andrew Booth. So I think we're going to see some significant improvement at that group, and I would like to see them just add one veteran guy to come in and just kind of be that P2. I mean, P2 very well could be back too, but just all the signs seem to be pointing that he's not going to be. Yeah. And then as for safety, that's just something I want to talk about next year. We got another year here with Harrison Smith. I think he's going to be back.
Band-Aid on it.
I hope he retires a Viking and Lewis Seen as his counterpart. I've had enough of Can.
So I think the consensus so far has been the top two positions in need being receiver, linebacker, and maybe I guess if we're trying to build consensus between the three of us, is it interior D line, or is it?
I would say majority of the stuff I've seen online, they would probably say corner. They'd probably say cornerback. A lot of people are displeased with our secondary. We gave up a lot of yards through the air last year, but I still am like a firm believer that a lot of that was schematic.
And Tanner, you've sold me. I was already leaning this way, but you've solidified for me. D line is in the top three for me. I think all of the complaints last year was like, where's Zadarius? Where's Daniil? But we had zero pressure from the other three positions on the D line. I'm hoping the beluga whale could potentially be your Cinderella from last year in Kairos Tonga. Yeah. 6'4", 337. He seemed like he maybe had some penetration in him with being able to get in the backfield. I'd like to see him get a real opportunity. He's kind of been a guy who's hopped around a little bit. I thought he took advantage of the opportunities that were given to him last year. But I agree. I think both Delvin and Harrison Phillips showed flashes at times of looking really good and kind of what we expected when we signed them as free agents. And then there were games where it seemed like they disappeared and just weren't on the field. And everyone looked at Daniil and Zadarius, maybe as they should, because they're the guys. But to not get any help from anyone else on the D line is a tall task for those edge rushers.
So you guys feel pretty good about it then? If we could, I know the draft is a crapshoot, but if you could get a number 2 receiver, get a linebacker in there that's solid, and get a D lineman that's solid, and you place that with who we think's coming back, you got to feel pretty good going into 23 with a new scheme on the defensive side of the ball as well. And then an offense that's probably willing to pop even a little bit more with the second year in the system and that deep threat that you're hoping for. So I don't know. It feels like those three would be pretty solid additions. What were you going to say, Tanner?
Run it back.
Run it back.
I can't state enough how much I think like Brian Flores' hire has like given me hope for this upcoming year. I just think it's an amazing hire. I'm really excited to see what he does with the defense. I would say, just as an honorable mention, interior O line, and not necessarily because of what I'm seeing a lot of online. Like, people kind of want to write off like Ed Ingram, like it wasn't his rookie year. But obviously Bradbury's not under contract. We got to see what they do to either re-sign him, replace him. You probably need someone at least as a backup plan if Ingram doesn't start figuring it out. It would kind of be nice to get like a pretty like middle of the road to above average of like a veteran free agent. Seems like some linemen take a while to figure it out in the big boy league, playing in the trenches. So kind of be nice to get a relatively established guy who is going to be solid.
I'm actually look at the offensive line, both Super Bowl teams. I made a huge difference. Some of the stuff they were able to pull off. So what were we going to say, Tanner?
I was just going to say I'm glad that Goose actually brought that up because, I mean, I haven't done a ton of homework like I have in the past on this draft class yet, but this is a really good center class. Like this center class in this draft, there are some really solid guys. You have, I think there's like 5 or 6 that graded out, and 5 or 6 players, centers in this coming draft that graded out in the top 10 in PFF for college grades this past season. So that's like, I don't know how many qualifying players they have, over 300 or something like that. Cool. So you got some really, really good guys. I mean, even our homegrown John Michael Schmitz went to U of M. He is projected to be like one of the best offensive linemen in the draft. So I would love to see a guy like him or Drake Nugent or like Luke Whippler from Ohio State get drafted in like the 3rd or 4th round for the Vikes.
Well, I think we could talk offensive lines, probably a whole nother topic for a future one. But any other closing thoughts on these top 3 positions of need, guys?
The only other one I didn't really hit on, because I don't know what's going to happen yet, is edge rusher. I like our depth. I mean, I don't love DJ Wanham as a run stopper, but I think he provided some pretty good value as a pass rusher this year as a rotational guy, and so did Patrick Jones. He had a really, really good year. But that could become a very big need if Hunter or Smith are gone. If they don't plan on retaining both of those guys, that instantly, I think, has to get put near the top of the list, because this is a league where you got to generate pressure on some of these quarterbacks, and if you don't, they're going to pick you apart, and your defense is not going to be very good.
It's going to be interesting to see what there's going to have to be some moves that are made, but once we know what those are, this top 3 positions in need might change a little bit too. So, all right, well, there you have it, guys. Another episode, top 3 positions in need. I think we're going to dive into some more detail here coming down the line. Probably talk a little Kirk again too, and maybe what the plan is going forward there with the replacement. But we'd love to hear you guys' comments. If you're watching and you've got a comment on a position in need, throw it in the comments in the chat, and we'd love to address those going forward. So if you guys got anything else, let us know in the comments. But we'll come back again soon. Have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll talk to you again later. Thanks.